Okay, if you don't mind me just doing a Namo Tassa first of all, I should have done it this morning or yesterday, because this is words of the Buddha. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Thank you. Now I've only got this session today for the Sutta class, and I just wanted to put some important teachings of the Buddha there for you. And the first one is arising and passing away, and this is from Samyutta Nikaya 47, which is called the Satipatthana Samyutta. And Satipatthana has become a very important part of Buddha's teachings in recent times. And because of that, many people quote it, but very few people understand it. And especially about rise and fall. Sometimes they watch the body or they watch the breath and seeing things rise and fall. It doesn't mean that. This is how the Buddha explained rise and fall in regard to the Satipatthana. I will teach you the origination, the Pali word is samudaya, and the passing away of the four focuses of mindfulness. That's my translation for Satipatthana. What does it mean by rise and fall? Supported by the four nutriments, there is the origination and continuance of the body. With the cessation of the four nutriments, the body ceases. That's what the Buddha meant by saying, seeing the rise and fall of things. It didn't mean to see them come and go. Understand why they come, why they go. And when it comes to the body, the first satipatthana, the four nutriments are food, obviously, the six sense contacts, will, and consciousnesses. Now you may see there that I've got the plural for consciousnesses. The body does need some other consciousness to be present to sustain it. And this is only a byproduct, but it's fascinating to know that if somebody is very sick in hospital, even in a coma, how can their body be sustained? Even, it's not just with food, it's having some of the six sense contacts being stimulated. Even like you may have a grandmother, very old, very sick in hospital, and they said she's in a coma. Please keep holding her hand, touching her, stroking her, because that keeps her alive. Those six sense contacts. Also like will, or the will to live, or the will, no, I've had enough. That is an important cause for the continuance of this body, because you want to keep living. That's why sometimes people who really are sick, in pain, and maybe they can drug them to the eyeballs, but nevertheless, if they still want to live, they will. I don't know that because as a monk you ordinarily do a lot of work in palliative care. Have you ever seen like an old person about to die and they wait for one of their loved ones to come from overseas? Maybe a daughter who's working in the United States or something. When they finally arrive in Hong Kong, they see their father or something, grandfather, and the grandfather's so happy to see them. And then afterwards, after a few hours usually, then they pass away. They keep themselves alive. Their will keeps their body maintained until they finish that task of saying goodbye to one of their loved ones. So that makes so much sense. When it says, you understand the rise and the fall of the body, it doesn't mean just to say, it comes and goes. It's what keeps it going, where it comes from, what sustains it. And when these four things are taken away, the will, sense contact, food, and consciousnesses, then the body could be considered to be dead. Especially with the consciousnesses. I didn't mention this before. What is the Buddha's term for death? How do you know someone has died? It's just basically when they called it in Buddhism the stream of consciousness. When the stream of consciousness leaves the body, and that is kind of what death means. It goes off to either the light or to another place. So if you don't believe me, check it out when you die. What is actually the experience of death like? The body is no longer viable. And so food won't help. Sense contacts don't help. And the will, you don't want to carry on in this body. There's much better places to go. And so the experience, the stream of consciousness leaving the body, when that happens, that's called death. One of the reasons I mention that, because I've talked to many doctors in palliative care. How do you know that somebody's dead? A lot of times what they do is they shine a flashlight into your eyes. They shout something into your ear. And the palliative care doctors, they say that it's so difficult to actually to know that someone has really died. They make mistakes. And with all of the advances in science, they still use these old-fashioned methods. If you are a monk or a son or daughter, sometimes you can feel that when that stream of consciousness has left the body, they appear very, very different. I don't mean appear, I mean physically. You can feel that your dear old mum is no longer there. That's all I can actually say about that. But this is what it means, understanding rise and fall of the body. And when it comes to the next satipatthana, supported by the 6 sense contacts, there was the origination of Vedana. Vedana, that's usually translated as feeling, but that becomes very, very confusing. I prefer the translation for Vedana as experience. Something to be felt, to be experienced, because every sense has its own different word for Vedana. It does not just mean good experience, bad experience, or neutral experience. Even that was very confusing. What is neutral experience? Because it's always a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Sometimes there's a bit of each. So that's very confusing, but it just means experience in general. Not just the 5 sense experience, but the mind experience as well. That's Vedana, something you can feel, you can experience. And that's supported by the 6 senses. And I know that translation is valid, but it can make you see the Dhamma in a very different way. When the 6 senses go, there's no more experience. Experience ceases. There's not a 7th sense experience, just 6. It gives you a much clearer idea what parinibbana is. With the cessation of the 6 sense contacts, experience ceases. Next one, the citta, the mind. This is actually what you experience with nimittas, but even more clearly in the jhana experiences. Supported by nama rupa. And nama rupa has got many, many different descriptions. I kind of try and make it simple. by calling it objects of consciousness, what you can be conscious of, Nama-rupa. And if you see this, that when the objects of consciousness arise, then consciousness can arise. When the Nama-rupa ceases, then citta or mind ceases. And I say this, I'm just not holding back here. I'm not teaching you what you'd like to hear. Often I teach what is challenging for you. And this is that citta is nothing permanent, always there, always ready to experience things. When there's nothing to experience, the citta turns off. No longer there. Doesn't exist. When there's something to experience, the citta turns on again. It's dependently originated. And lastly, with the cessation of Nama-rupa, the citta mind ceases. Supported by attention, there's the origination of mind objects. The cessation of attention, mind objects cease. If you wish, you can check that out. It's in the Satipatthana Samyutta, the 42nd Sutta. And if you forget to actually know where this actually is, now the advertisement from my sponsors, that this is all going to be printed out in a book available. I keep forgetting when, in July, August, June or July. Okay, now we go down to 41. 2 more pages till we get to the 5 hindrances. Oh, you got the 5 hindrances later on? This is mindfulness of mind objects page. Okay, great. But this is where they say this is one of the things you can be aware of in the 4th Satipatthana. But do you remember what you have to do first before you actually contemplate or explore the 4th Satipatthana? Vinay loke abhijja domanasang. Having weakened the 5 hindrances, then you contemplate the 5 hindrances. Basically, to really do the Satipatthana, you have to basically have almost abandon those 5 hindrances. That's why here I write, you are mindful of mind objects in terms of the 5 hindrances. When there was wanting regarding the 5 senses, you are mindful that there was wanting. You can't be mindful of the 5 hindrances when the 5 hindrances are there. That's a problem with 5 hindrances. They distort perception. You can't really see what's there. You see what you want to see. Remember that story I think I told, was it last night? The only place to fall in love is when it's very dark. It's true. But that's where your hindrances have much more freedom to play around and distort perception. Or even more than that, that story I told of the levitating flower pot. Were you here when I told that story? You remember it? It was just an experiment done in Imperial College in London to physicists. And this guy came up, and one of the well-known physicists, and said he could levitate a flower pot. And because they thought it was a bit crazy, you can't do that, but he was a well-regarded member of the science community in London. So they took him seriously. And he wasn't a crank. And he just brought the flower pot into the lecture theatre and put it on the table. And there's no strings. It's just he actually brought it in. I'm now going to levitate it, but I need your help. What help do you need? He said, sit down there. We've got all these machines to show there's no funny business going on. UV cameras, infrared cameras, videos, everything you could possibly imagine. It's a very good university. They had all this equipment. He was a professor, this guy doing a demonstration. He could actually loan it for the lecture. And he said, I need you all to help me by sitting down, don't get up, by chanting the Indian holy word, Om. That's what they all did. Om. Like you can join in. Om, Om, Om. And as they were doing this, the flower pot lifted in the air. They filmed it. It was real. It actually levitated. And afterwards, this was like historic, groundbreaking. And actually doing levitation. Imagine what can happen if you can levitate people. I would have no trouble climbing the stairs anymore or getting up. You wouldn't need the lift. You just levitate straight up to the floor I'm on. I was about to say what floor it was. But be careful. But there was one or two of those audience. They said, they insisted, they were sure it stayed on the table all the time. It never levitated. And that was the purpose of the demonstration. When something happens which is too hard for you to accept, too impossible, it challenges your views of the way the world is. An example of that, suppose an alien from one of the planets outside of Alpha Centauri suddenly came back here in a beam of light and appeared in front of me. And they asked you, take me to your leader. Would you believe it? Everybody would think, no, this is some setup, some game, or whatever. Honestly, would you? Are you sure? Yeah, a lot of people do think that. But anyway, this scientist did. It can't happen. Therefore, they blocked it out. They didn't even see it. It was blocked out of their perception before it even arose into their perception. It wasn't bare awareness. The awareness was never allowed to arise inside their mind. It was blocked beforehand. So it's not you see something and know it can't be true. You don't even see it. It's blocked beforehand. And that was the whole purpose of the experiment. As you all know, those who've heard this story before, that it didn't really levitate. It was just a big electromagnet under the bench. And they needed to do the Om, Om, Om to hide the electric current being turned on, because that was a huge current. And to have that power to lift a flower pot, there's many hundreds of amps. And if they weren't hiding that sound with Om, 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 everyone would have heard it and guess what was happening. But the whole purpose was just how unreliable perception is. Bare perception. What's called in some meditation circles as raw perception. Even before you know it, it's been bent. And that was just quite a powerful demonstration. So anyway, that is one of the reasons why when the 5 hindrances are there, you cannot trust what you see, what you hear, what you smell, taste, touch, or know. Have you ever had food? You may have an allergy to something, and you eat that food, but it's hidden. People explain, no, it's not. One of the things which I can't eat raw is apples. I've got an allergy for them. I never knew that. I never ate apples when I was young. If they were cooked, baked, in pies and stuff, no problem at all. But raw apple made me feel sick afterwards. And my mother would always surprise, have an apple. I said, no. She thought I was just being, uh, I don't know, difficult. I said, no, it makes me feel sick. I read this article about a lady. She was legitimately allergic to vegetables. And it was actually true. The doctor, had a certificate. No, this eating vegetables makes this woman feel sick. So he had such a hard time trying to get a healthy diet. Eat some vegetables. No, it makes me sick. Oh, don't just say that. But it was real. So anyway, you give me an apple pie, and I'm very happy. Give me a raw apple, which is much more healthy. If I eat it, I get sick inside. And the other thing is honey. I'm a weird monk. Anyway, so just if we can go down a bit to the similes for the 5 hindrances. This is Majjhima 39. Is that clear on the screen? Suppose you took out a loan. Okay, sorry. You got it? Yeah, it's just underneath the 5 hindrances. Suppose you took out a loan and your business was successful. Okay, great. Suppose you took out a loan and your business was successful. Then you repaid that loan and there was enough left over for your own enjoyment and for that of your family. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. That's a simile for overcoming, it comes out in a moment, sensual desire. Or suppose you were very ill and you couldn't eat or sleep and had no strength. Later, however, you recovered, could eat and sleep again. You regained your strength. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you were imprisoned and later were released, safe and secure, with no loss to your property. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you were a slave, dependent on others, unable to go where you want. Then later you were released from slavery, independent of others, able to go where you want. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you had to travel along a dangerous road across a wilderness, but later you would pass through that wilderness safe and secure with no loss to your property. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. And those were the Buddha's similes for the 5 hindrances, as follows. So too, when these 5 hindrances were present, you look back upon them as a debt. That's wanting. I kind of love that simile. If you're wanting something, you're actually finding some happiness in the future, which you have to pay back later on. Imagine fantasizing about winning a lottery or coming into possession of a lot of money. I know my brother researched a family tree. He was actually hoping that somewhere in our ancestors there was a rich businessman or maybe a lord, and we could claim a big estate. He didn't find anything. We were all poor. But nevertheless, that we hope, we fantasize, we dream, We watch TV shows. We're in debt. We're wasting the energy which is happiness by searching for happiness. It's going into debt. And ill will, when you get angry at someone or fed up with yourself, that anger was looked upon by the Buddha as a disease. Just like having COVID. You can't do what you want. It obsesses you. And anger makes you do really, really stupid things. And you can't look after the main concerns. Even your food, you don't eat properly. You can't sleep at night. And your business dealings just don't go well. It is a disease. That's why anybody would encourage ill will, aversion. It's worse than COVID. It lasts much longer. And this is dullness and drowsiness is a prison. If you're really, really tired, you've got no energy, sometimes you just literally cannot move anywhere. It is like being in a prison. And slavery is the wandering mind. You can't keep it still. You're like a slave. Sometimes it's like having somebody always telling you what to do. You can't do what you want to do. You're controlled by the objects of your wandering mind. You like to be still, but the mind doesn't obey. You're a slave. And lastly, being on a dangerous road across a wilderness is the Buddha's description for doubt. You don't know which way to go. And just to lighten things up for a moment, I like to tell the story, another simile, my simile, of the man lost in the desert. He'd been in the desert for so many days. He didn't know where to go, which way to turn, and he was crawling in the sand on his hands and knees. He hadn't eaten for so many days. He hadn't drunk for so many days. He was dehydrated, and also just I think the sun was playing on his brain, so that when he saw something in the distance, something shimmer in the distance, he kind of thought, this must be just a mirage. The sun is playing with my head. He hadn't seen anybody in days. But nevertheless, as he was looking at this shimmering image on the horizon, it started coming closer, and it seemed to be more solid. He started to get a glimmer of hope. And as he kept looking in this direction, he saw that it was real. It was not a mirage. So he thought he must be imagining this. This was in the middle of the desert. He hadn't seen anyone in days. And as it came closer, he could even hear the sound. It sounded like dogs barking. And he thought he was really going crazy. That's what sometimes happens when you get sunstroke. But as it came closer, he could make out the images. What it was a sled with 4 husky dogs on the front pulling it. And this was gentlemen in furs on the back. And he thought, this is weird. And as it came really close, the dogs even started licking his face. He realized it was not a mirage after all. It was weird. He was being rescued with a husky dog sled in the middle of the desert, being driven by indigenous Inuit people. They used to call them Eskimos, in the middle of a desert. And he said to the Inuit driver, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been lost for days. And the Inuit driver said, and you think you're lost? Okay. So I'm going to go down a bit further now to 2 more pages. And they do a bit more on Anapanasati. The Nibbana through Anapanasati bit. This is actually the main part of today's talk. First of all, to say that this, I'm not sure if I emphasized this yesterday, that when mindfulness of breathing is developed, are you on that page behind me? When I was a school teacher, I could develop eyes in the back of my head to see the naughty pupils playing around when I was turned around. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is a great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it completes the four focuses of mindfulness, the four satipatthana. When the four satipatthana are developed and cultivated, they complete the seven enlightenment factors. When the seven enlightenment factors are developed and cultivated, they complete true knowledge and deliverance, enlightenment. So, what is the difference between anapanasati and developing the four satipatthanas? The Buddha is saying no difference. You complete one, you complete the other. I mentioned that just to show when I claimed yesterday there's no difference between satipatthana and anapanasati. I wanted you to see how the Buddha explained it. When the anapanasati is developed and cultivated, it completes the four focuses of mindfulness. So if you do an anapanasati retreat, tell your friends you did the four satipatthana. Oh, you went on a vipassana retreat. And say, no, it's the same. Anyway, I wanted to go on to this again. The anapanasati, just in breath and out breath are long, you're where they're long. In breath and out breath are short, you're where they're short. You learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out. You learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out. That's actually saying it without too much repetition. Because even I remember just teaching that, and sometimes when you're breathing in long, you know you are breathing in long. When you're breathing in short, you know you're breathing in short. When you're breathing out long, you know you're breathing out long. When you're breathing out short, you know you're breathing out. Did I get it right? It's so long that sometimes those repetitions complicate the ability to convey the information precisely. And the other thing is that some teachers, even Thai forest teachers, sometimes they say that third point, when you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out, sometimes they say when you experience the whole body as you breathe in and out. Because the word is kaya, but the body means many different things. It's very similar to the use of the word body in English. A body of troops, a body of evidence, the body of Dhammakaya. Each one of these things shows that the kaya doesn't just mean a body in the sense of a physical body. And even here the Buddha says, in and out breathing is regarded by the Buddha as a body in the category of bodies. That is why on that occasion a meditator abides mindful of the body, having restrained the five hindrances, energized, fully aware of the purpose, and mindful. Those are the first four stages. And you don't have to do stage one and then stage two and then stage three and stage four. It's a very natural process. Now you're aware of the breath right now. Is the last breath you breathed in a moment ago, was that long or short? Or in between? It doesn't really matter what it was, as long as you know. It helps you be aware of the breath. And that is one of the reasons why that sometimes people do breath meditation by even counting. Breathing in one, breathing in two, out two. Or even counting the breath. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It just makes you more aware of the body, of the breath. And sometimes you make it even more interesting. In the Thai forest tradition, they used to use the word Buddha with the breath, breathing in, Bud, breathing out, To. Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. That really worked if you were brought up as a Buddhist, and that word Buddha was really, really powerful for you. When I started teaching meditation in the West, that didn't really work so much if you weren't Thai. Westerners couldn't really hang on to it, so I had to adapt it. So I told people, as you breathe in, say the word shut. As you breathe out, up. Shut. It was much more helpful, but just like you, when I said that, they started laughing. They didn't take it seriously. So instead, if you want to do something with your breathing to make it more interesting, you can actually do things like breathing in peace. And as you say that, just imagine what peace is for you. Don't just say a word. What does the word point to? Paint a picture of peace. I know that sometimes people picture the white dove flying in with your in-breath, because that was a symbol of peace for them. Any symbol will do. And you maintain that many, many breaths, breathing in peace and visualizing it as the breath comes in, and breathe out, let go. You never found a better way of breathing out with the concept of let go. And if you're sick, breathing in health, breathing out sickness. You wouldn't be surprised how powerful that is if you continue like that for 5 or 10 minutes. Every in-breath, breathing in peace or health, breathing out, let go. It's amazing how that has a huge effect on you. And so the point is here, it doesn't matter if you notice the length of the breath or the quality of the breath as it comes in and goes out. You add something there to make it more interesting. And then you learn to experience the whole of the breath. And that's actually when you start. I need to put this down to be able to show this, and look at my face, not the board. This is just experiencing the breath go in and out. See it go past. This is left to right. It's my right to left, but by you see it's left to right. Who's correct? A lot of times this is where we have arguments. Did my finger move from right to left or left to right? It only moved one way. It can't be both. It's just perspectives, isn't it? So sometimes many of the arguments people have, they're looking at things from a different perspective, that's all. But anyway, for you, it's moving from left to right and right to left. That's just knowing the breath. Knowing the whole of the breath. You see it from the right all the way. That's all your left. You see it from the left to your right, and you see it from the right to your left. And to encourage people to know this, I say just when the breath has gone in, there's always a pause before it goes out. When it goes out, there's always a pause before it starts going in again. Which is longer? The pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, or the pause between the out-breath and the in-breath? Look, you can't say now, you've got to look and find out and discover. The only meaning of this is that it makes the breath a little bit more interesting for you. There's more to watch, especially if I give a prize of a fruit for anyone who gets the right answer first. There is no right answer. But nevertheless, you understand it motivates you to look a bit closer. And the last one is to calm the breath down. Now, when you calm the breath down, do you have to do anything to calm the breath down? It happens naturally. Because the longer you're watching your breath, you're not doing anything else, especially if you're watching the whole breath from beginning to end. You haven't got time in between to start thinking. You're watching the breath going in. Okay, it's in. Now I've got to think, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Okay, it goes out again. Okay, go back again to the breath. You don't have any gaps in your perception to actually to do anything else except by watching the breath. That's why full awareness of the breath is so important. That's where you start to get peaceful. And as you are getting peaceful, the breath calms down. You know why it calms down? It calms down because you're not doing anything. Your metabolism goes down. You don't need so much breath. You're not moving. And you know, the mind, the brain takes up so much energy, more than any other part of your body, so I was told. But when you're not doing anything, you're sitting still, you're not worrying about the past or the future, just being in this moment, you don't need so much breath. The whole thing calms down. And because it calms down, with it, your five senses are beginning to disappear. So now you do the second of the 4 parts of Anapana. Now, I translated this pretty accurately. You're not watching the breath. You're not deliberately breathing in and breathing out. Your job, your task, what you're actually doing is you're experiencing the joy and the pleasure as you breathe in and out. The breath will come in and out by itself. Now your task is to experience the beauty, the happiness, the joy as you breathe in and out. So it's important here because you're not really watching the breath. You're watching that aspect of the breath, which is its joy, its pleasure. You can look at me now. What are you looking at? Are you looking at my size, my weight, the clothes I'm wearing? These are different aspects of what you're watching. And here, you're watching the breath still, but you're watching that aspect of its joy and happiness. And so when this starts to happen, you're not looking at the length of the breath, you're looking at this joyfulness. So when this comes, please watch it. Don't think you're doing something wrong. You're actually enjoying meditation now. And you learn to experience the mental formation. This is called a chitta sankhara, as you breathe in and out. And to me, I missed this for so many years. So when I get to this description, I always point out the happiness and pleasure you're feeling when you're breathing in and out is what the mind experiences as the breath. It's made from the mind. It's not made from the body. You're transitioning from the body sense to the mind sense. You're not feeling the breath. You're knowing the breath, experiencing it through a different sense base. You're actually transitioning from the body to the mind. And now we get the interesting stuff. Number 3. You know the word 3 was not actually in the sutta. I added a number 3. You know why I did that? Because to make it easier to understand. It's not distorting the teachings. You know, in English, even in Chinese, in Hong Kong, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. It makes it easier to understand. So the next stage of Anapanasati, when you learn to experience the citta. What is the citta you're experiencing? This is what I have been calling the nimitta. Now, sometimes people who don't know the suttas complain that Ajahn Brahm just invents this word up himself. You find the connection between the citta you see in meditation and the nimitta in the Upakilesa Sutta. You can look it up for yourself if you need to, but that's where it comes from. It comes from the suttas. When you learn to experience the citta as you breathe in and out, when you learn to brighten the nimitta, bring joy to the nimitta, that's the sampasadanang cittang in the Pali. Sampasadanang is a combination of confidence and joy. You know that sometimes people who have faith, look more happy than others. Many, many years ago, this English author, however, 100 years ago, George Bernard Shaw, was asked, why are people with faith, especially meaning faith in Christianity, appear more happy than people without faith? And George Bernard Shaw immediately replied, for the same reason people who are drunk appear more happy than those who are sober. Brilliant. But this is why you're meditating. So you experience the citta as you breathe in and out. You learn to brighten the nimitta. You make it more enjoyable, more bright, more beautiful. How do you do that? By keeping still. As you are still, it's like holding a magnifying glass in front of the sun, on the ground. It focuses the heat of the sun and things start to become a light. When your mind is still, whatever happiness in there is there because you don't move, that joy becomes stronger and stronger. And that's why I say that sometimes when these nimittas come up, you feel you can't take so much energy. But one of the great insights you will find, as I found, you can. It's very, very bright and beautiful. Oh no, I've lost my place again. I'll put it back again. And then you learn to settle the nimitta. And even there, the word it's the verb associated with samadhi, samadahang. You learn how to keep that nimitta perfectly still. It doesn't move. Just staying there. And that's when it gets really strong. And the next stage is you learn to enter the jhana. The words here is vimochayang jitang. It literally means to free the mind. But that word, if you start reading Pali again and again and again, you see that word always refers to the jhanas. To liberate the mind means you liberate it from the body. It doesn't mean you do an outer body experience. It means you enter the jhanas. And as a result of that, number 4, the next 4 stages, when you learn to explore impermanence, anicca, in breath meditation, you learn to explore things fading away in breath meditation, you learn to explore things ceasing in breath meditation, you learn to explore relinquishing things in breath meditation. Those are the next 4 stages there, which happen automatically. You're exploring impermanence. your body and five senses have disappeared. You just experience that. You see just like these beautiful lights coming up and then they disappear. They're impermanent, they fade away and then they cease. You relinquish control of them. But now, I do always run out of time, but now I wanted to go further down into the right stillness chapter, number 8. Have we got that now? Okay. So, right stillness jhana. I remembered a time when my father was occupied, when I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree. Having passed beyond the five senses and free from unwholesome states, I entered and abided in the first jhana. I thought, could that be the path to enlightenment? Then the realization arose. That jhana is indeed the path to enlightenment. You know that when that happened, after the Buddha had done all those ascetic practices, and those ascetic practices, like somebody, told me, eating his own poo, doing all those crazy things. Don't think that's what you have to do to become enlightened. Otherwise, you might as well leave right now. Those were like experimenting, doing all the wrong things, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, not washing. And that means that after he did that, he discovered it's hard to experience any of those jhanas with a body which is so weak and emaciated. Not impossible, but hard. So he started to eat. He started to sleep. He started to rest when he needed to rest. And then his body got strong enough to go to Bodh Gaya and sit under the Bodhi tree. I first went to Bodh Gaya, I think, in 1973. And it was so much different than it is these days. It was actually peaceful then. Hardly anybody around. And when I next went back, it's like almost like a Disneyland now. There's so many noise and people. And that's never was my perception. But I thought, what would it have been like when the Buddha went there? It was just this beautiful grove by a freely flowing river. There's places to wash, to filter water to drink, and these beautiful trees you could sit underneath. It was like a park, a very gentle, beautiful park. And because of that, it was a suitable place for meditation. But when he went to sit there, his first 5 friends abandoned him. They said, if you can't get enlightened by the ascetic practices, how can you ever get enlightened? And that's why the first teaching of the Buddha in the Dhammacakka Sutta, what was it? Was it the Four Noble Truths? Was the middle way. Please avoid any practices atta gilamata anuyoga. Gilamata, which tire, weaken, exhaust the body. Avoid those. And avoid any practices which indulge in the pleasures of the 5 senses. Kama Sukha Adhikanu Yoga. And first of all, if you have an accurate translation, you'll understand what's going to come up pretty soon. I'll just go down a bit. Can we go to where it says DN29? The Archunda. You go to there. Now this is important. This is from the Pasadika Sutta of the Digha Nikaya. There are, Chunda, these four kinds of life devoted to pleasure that are entirely conducive to repulsion, fading away, cessation, peace, realization, enlightenment, and nibbana. What are they? The four jhanas. So if devotees of other sects should say that the Buddhists are addicted to these four forms of pleasure seeking, they should be told, yes, for they'll be speaking correctly of you. Then some people might further ask you, what benefits can you expect from a life attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking? You should reply that they can expect only four results, four benefits. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. These are the benefits that you can expect from being attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking. So is Ajahn Brahm attached to pleasure seeking? Sometimes I like to say things like that which kind of shock people. Not the pleasures of the five senses, but the pleasures of the mind, because they lead to enlightenment. Okay, I'm going to carry on here. I've only got 2 or 3 minutes to go. This is from Majjhima 64. This is the Mahamoggallana. No, that's like the Gatikawa Sutta. No, where was it? Mahamalonkya Putta Sutta. There is one path only, Ananda, one way to the abandoning of the five basic fetters. I call these the samyojana, which stop you being a non-returner. And I like it when the Buddha said, it is impossible that anyone can understand or abandon these five basic fetters without relying on that path. It's not just not abandoning them, you can't even understand what they are. No more than it is possible to cut out the hard wood from a tree without cutting through its bark and sapwood first. What is that path? The four jhanas and the first three immaterial attainments. And as soon as I read that, like most of you, you thought there must be another way they haven't thought of. Maybe you can go through the roots, or maybe I don't know why, especially people trained in Western universities think they know a better way. But what it really means is, if you want to get to even the being a non-returner, let alone an arahat, you have to abandon the five basic fetters. That's wrong view, attachment to rites and rituals, doubt, this craving for the five sense pleasures, and ill will. You don't even know what those actually are until you attain to these deep meditations called the jhanas. And anyway, I'll quickly state the other ones I wanted you to remember. While you still not, this is from the Nalakapana Sutta, while you still do not experience jhana, the five hindrances, together with discontent and weariness, invade your mind and remain. But when you do experience a jhana, the five hindrances, discontent and weariness, do not invade your mind and remain. So, based on that, if any of you come up and say you've just experienced a jhana, what I usually say is, Women from Poland can never experience a jhana. And if you get upset at me, then I know that was not a jhana. Of course they can. It's just trying to test you to see whether you get upset. Because if you get upset, you have discontent. And that cannot arise in you when you've just come out of a jhana. So that's like a test. Instead of asking you, what did you experience? People can make up all sorts of rubbish. But when you actually test them, are you really discontent? You don't have any discontent. Okay, Ajahn Brahm, doesn't matter. And also, if you get into a jhana and think, wow, I've practiced so hard to get into this jhana, I need to go to bed now. What's one of the other things which disappears? This word tandi, weariness. Please excuse me, but if you get into a jhana this afternoon, you will not be able to sleep tonight. You won't want to sleep. You won't need to sleep. You just got too much energy up in the body and the mind. There's nothing wrong with not sleeping if you just blissed out in deep meditation. You're incredibly healthy. You don't need to sleep. What's sleep for? Your body is rested, sitting perfectly still for a few hours. Not just that, but sleep is usually to cleanse the brain. All the tiredness, all the work, that's not needed now. You just had a beautiful jhana. You just don't sleep. And it's not bad for your health. You're not doing this because you think, oh, I've got to prove to someone that it was a jhana. It's natural. And it's also the 5 hindrances. Like the wanting, the aversion, the sloth and torpor. Of course it goes. You can't even go to bed, let alone have sloth and torpor when you're meditating. No restlessness and no doubt. That's one of the amazing things which disappears, doubt. For years, I didn't really understand what doubt really meant. Just like, that joke about the Eskimo in the desert rescuing somebody. That's just a joke. But what actually is doubt? I don't mind mentioning that one of the things which happened to me when I was a young monk, this time over in Bodhinyana Monastery, having some nice meditation experiences. When you come out, you may try this. It's a wonderful thing to do. When you're coming out of your meditation, you ask yourself, what's my earliest memory? Keep it simple. And if your mind has been free of the 5 hindrances, then straight away you remember something from your past. One of my students over there, she was a good meditator. And when she asked that question, she got herself as a little baby, sucking at her mother's womb. It's not you just don't see this, you are it. It's like traveling back into that time. It's weird. It's what I was saying at lunchtime today, that sometimes time loses its meaning when you're meditating. But here, anyway, she got this experience of being a suckling, just breastfeeding at her mother's womb. And that's when she freaked out. Because when she saw the person breastfeeding her, it wasn't her mother, it was someone else. And so she came out of her early life memory. And then the first opportunity, he asked me for an interview. And then I said, well, just later on, I knew her mother. Go and ask her, now, am I adopted? Are you my real mother? And she said, I can't do that. I said, yes, you can. Not asking would create more problems for you. So she went to her mum, told her exactly what had happened, and then asked her mother, are you my real mother? It's a tough thing to ask your mum. But she wasn't angry or upset. She loved her mother very much. And her mother said, of course I am. What are you talking about? And then her daughter related the story to her mother. And the mother was so astounded because the descriptions you have are so clear. I said, I never told you. You had a wet nurse when you were young. I never breastfed you. I paid somebody else to do that for you. And that's such an amazing description of your wet nurse. Accurate. And he said, there's no photos I kept of her. You don't take photos of a wet nurse. But that's what she looked like. And that gave her mother, more than either of them, so much confidence that these experiences are real. But even more than that, if that happens to you, when you experience this, the hindrance of doubt is gone. You know that was real. You don't need to prove it. It's not arrogance. It's a totally different feeling. You only know these hindrances are gone, or what they are, once they disappear. So, once doubt disappears, then you know what doubt was. Just to quickly, Anguttara 881, this is the Anguttara 8. When you have no jhana, for one deficient in jhana, the cause for seeing things as they truly are is destroyed. Without that jhana, that stillness, your perceptions are distorted. When you do not see things as they really are, they truly are. For one deficient in such wisdom, the cause for repulsion and fading away is destroyed. The cause for knowledge and vision of liberation is destroyed. So please develop jhana. When you experience jhana, you can understand things as they really are. And what do you understand as it really is? The origin and passing away of form, of experience, of perception, of will, of consciousnesses. The 5 components of existence, the 5 khandha. There is no jhana for one without wisdom. There is no wisdom for one without jhana. For one who has both jhana and wisdom, they are in the presence of nibbana. Wisdom is the map. Jhana is the flashlight. To find the treasure, you need both. I've gone over time again, but this is the last kind of sutta class. Are there any questions on what I've said so far? Fresh in your mind? I don't mind going over time. Yes?
It seems to be, it's mentioned jhana wisdom, not mentioned about compassion.
What is jhana? When you get that kind of bliss, like that lady Anita Murjani, she was a Catholic, but at least her experience of that, entering that nimitta when she had a near-death experience, she experienced like a union with the love of God. That's how she described it. If you've been to the same place, you can understand why she said that. Bliss and real love are almost identical, especially the first jhana. If you have no other words to describe it, the purity of unconditional loving kindness. And you're not there, you're inside of it. It's not like you're looking at it at a distance, like I'm looking at you. It's like I'm right inside of you and feel what it's like to be you. Feel what it's like to be loving kindness. And you can't get there without loving kindness. That's part of the path. Sometimes there's other different types of bliss. Of course there are. But each one of them, especially the first, has this beautiful feeling of you disappear and all that energy, whatever anybody else can take from it, can share with, of course it's shared. Does that make any sense? Okay. Any other questions someone has? Do you know that that surprised me. I can answer a question in a minute instead of 10 or 20 minutes. So thank you for that. But what I did want to do with this sutta class is to say, I'm not making this up. It's not Ajahn Brahm's take on this. I'm just repeating what I learned from the Buddha, from Ajahn Chah and all the other great monks and nuns which I've been to and asked questions of. And to see this might not be the same as you've heard said. Even things like rise and fall. When you see how the Buddha said it, then it makes a total difference to how you do satipatthana. You have a body, why does it disappear? Why is it maintained? Your citta, your mind, what is it? It's not an absolute eternal identity which never changes and is always there. It's caused by the objects of consciousness. When those objects of consciousness vanish, so does the citta. It's temporary. It's not permanent forever. Any questions? You can? Yeah, great, thank you.
I heard that people need to accumulate many lifetimes of paramita to attain jhana. So it seems jhana is far away from you, from those people.
So how do you know you haven't already accumulated enough paramita? You're at a meditation retreat with Ajahn Brahm. That means you have a lot of accumulated good karma. So you're already close enough. Don't just think, oh, I'm hopeless, I haven't done enough paramita. Otherwise you'll always be making paramita and never actually cashing it in. Now's the time to go to the ATM, Ajahn Brahm teller machine, actually got ABM, and check it out. Use some of that paramita and use it to get a jhana and become enlightened. Very good, I convinced her. Any other question? Okay. Well, there'll be more opportunities for questions this evening, and I will try to actually answer as many as I possibly can. So I'm sorry that I took such a long time last night answering all these questions, but there were such good questions. And when you get a good question, you want to answer it fully. So if your question doesn't get answered tonight, it's not any discrimination. It's just that too many questions. You won't have everyone answered and satisfied, but at least you'll get many questions answered as deeply as I possibly can. Thank you.